Hi everybody, my name is Sarah Penner and I'm the author of The Lost Apothecary. I'm super excited that this is my first video. I've been putting this off for months. I'm probably not alone because I absolutely hate seeing myself on video, but I have to get used to this. So as many of you know, my debut novel comes out March 2021 with Park Row Books, an imprint of HarperCollins, and I have no choice at this point but to get comfortable with being in front of crowds and being on camera. So this is my very first session and I have so many ideas for content and it was very hard to pick what to cover first. So what I did was I looked around at my mini bookshelves in my house and I chose 3 of my most meaningful favorite old books that I have. So my goal for these videos, some of them will just be really fun, kind of showing you different stuff I have around the house or what I've been up to, and those will probably be like 5 to 7 minutes. But then I think there's going to be some others that are more targeted at writing and the author experience and a little more technical in nature, so revision processes, etc. And those might be a little longer, maybe like 10, 15, even 20 minutes. So for today, though, like I said, I'm going to start with something super fun, and I'm going to show you 3 books that I just love and tell you a little bit about where I got them and why they're so meaningful to me. So I'm going to start with this one. This has some really beautiful marble color, which was very common for 18th century publishing. And this is actually a little book of sermons. So it's called Sermons on the Relative Duties, and it's on domestic happiness, actually. So this was preached at Queen Street Chapel in London, at St. Paul's, which is in Covent Garden. It's actually one of my favorite places in London. There's some really beautiful history in Covent Garden. There actually used to be quite a few brothels in the area. But this was preached by Reverend Theodore Franklin in 1770, which is like the coolest thing to me. This book, I paid $25 US for this at the Antiquarian Book Fair in St. Petersburg, Florida. I think I got this 2 years ago, but to me, this is an absolute steal. Like, I can't believe that this was $25 for something that's almost 250 years old. So the way that sermons worked in the 18th century, I researched this a fair bit for my first book, which was never published. It's probably better shoved away in a desk drawer. But the way this worked was the reverend or the pastor would stand up in the pulpit, and these people in the congregation would listen to these sermons for hours. Like, it wasn't like church today where you're just kind of like a 20-minute homily or something. These were very long, and so there's all of these cool sermons in here, like parents to children, masters to servants, like concepts and roles that we don't even necessarily have today. But just the pages are really beautiful. Like, you can kind of see a lot of just the aged, yellowed paper. I don't want to open the book too far because I don't want to damage it. But a really beautiful spine as well. So these ridges are, you can kind of feel the bumps. So it's just so fun, like, having these kind of books in my own personal collection, because I can go look at them whenever I want, and I do. They're not just there like as a background. I really do go and like open up these books, and sometimes they inspire story ideas. The next thing I have, I got this last year at the same book fair, which, by the way, the book fair was canceled this year for COVID. Very sad, because there's so many amazing things there. This is in not very good condition, so I need to be very careful with it, but this is actually an illustrated guidebook. And I think I only paid like maybe, let's see, $10.70 for this one. This was published in 1918, so a lot more recent relative to the one I just showed you, but it's full of ads. So, and some really old, amazing maps. So let me pull out one of these maps. The pages are just so fragile. So you can see, like, there's this huge pull-out map here that people, as they're walking around the city in the early 20th century, right around the time of World War I, they could have looked in this. There's information on the police and postal information. There are actually some photos as well that were reproduced in the guide. And when I look at this type of stuff, I almost feel a physical longing in my chest to go back and see these places as they're described in the book, because really this is a lost world. This does not exist to us anymore. Obviously the Chelsea Royal Hospital, there's a little passage about that in here. It does, of course, still exist, I think. I'm pretty sure it does. It sounds familiar. But, it talks about the shady avenues and free admission. All of that is lost to us. Really, it's only in the pages of these old guides. And so I almost get sad when I think about how many story ideas are buried in the pages of books like this. And yet there's not enough time in one person's life, i.e. me, to write everything that could be inspired by a book like this. I just opened up and turned to Whitechapel, which is where Jack the Ripper committed his crimes. I actually did a tour through Whitechapel several years ago. So in case you can't tell, London's my favorite city, which I also have a map of it on my wall behind where I'm sitting. So last but not least, The Journals of Dorothy Woodworth. This is volume 1 of 2. I went and got this on my nightstand right before this video. I've been reading this quite a bit. I find it very calming. This is a primary source, and in the world of research and history, what that means is it's not edited and reproduced by a historian or a researcher. It is a primary source, so diaries or manuscripts, first-hand accounts, basically, is what a primary source is. So when I read these are all in the late 1700s, these journal entries. And Dorothy talks a lot about the natural world. So she goes on these beautiful, I'll just kind of show it. You obviously can't read it here, but she goes on these evening walks almost every day. There really wasn't a whole lot to do back then except walk and nap and observe the flowers, all these things that I love about and put on my Instagram all the time. So she and I would have gotten along really well. But her journal entries, they're so simple and beautiful. And I've been reading this a lot lately with the stress of coronavirus, just as kind of a way to step back and remind myself that there was happiness and there was peace long before so many of the technical things that we've learned to take for granted today. And she talks a lot about it as well. Her brother, who was a famous poet, William Wordsworth, composing lines of his stories and his poetry. So it's interesting watching their interactions, and spoiler alert, but he gets married, and Dorothy really struggles with that. You can tell that she's got some envy that she feels guilty about. And I've thought that's a really good story idea too. But yet again, life is short, not enough time to write about all these amazing things. I got this at a bookstore, a used bookstore here in St. Pete. I'm going to show you something else really cool, by the way. But I got it for volume 1 and volume 2 for, again, less than $20. And I think it's one of the best purchases I've ever made. So I'm going to end with the coolest thing about this book. When I bought it, I didn't see this until after I bought it, but when I bought it, I opened up the cover, I was at home, and I found one of those old little sleeves like we all used to have in grade school, where you can put the library card, kind of pull it out, and anyone younger than 20 probably doesn't even know what I'm talking about. But it had this library card in it, and I was like, oh my gosh, so exciting. And so I went and I looked at the most recent stamp, which is right here, and you can see, maybe, I don't know, that's not very clear. It's from 1960. So I don't think this book had been opened since February of 1960. And that just blows my mind that, think how much has happened between then and now. And I can't really make out the name of the person who checked out the book. It was a doctor of some kind, and only 2 people had checked it out before him. There's only 3 people on this line. But I just kind of wonder, like, what prompted him to check this book out? What prompted the people before him? Were they nerds like me? Were they doing research projects? But it's mine now, so no more checkouts. But anyways, so those are 3 of my favorite books. Hopefully you guys found this interesting. In time, I'm going to just keep doing this and adapting and getting used to what you guys like and what you don't like. So hopefully this was fun. I know it was fun for me. And for those of you who have not heard of my book, The Lost Apothecary, it's a dual timeline historical fiction, women's fiction novel, and it's about a woman in London who goes mudlarking on the River Thames and finds a little apothecary vial and ultimately starts hunting down this culprit in these unsolved apothecary murders that happened 200 years prior. So as I mentioned, it's coming out in March of 2021 in the US and so far 11 international territories. And I'm so excited, and I would love if you would add it on Goodreads. Just search The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. Add it to your TBR list. Also follow me on Instagram, Sarah Penner Author. I've got a Facebook page, or on Twitter, SL Penner. You will find me. Thank you guys. Stay safe and healthy. Bye.